Contingency contract. Some people love it, some people fear it, and some people lose real life sanity over it. But I'm here to tell you that there really is nothing to fear. Contingency contract is one of the best times you can have in Arknights. There's a reason that contingency contract is called the endgame for Arknights. This is the time where you can take your account, you can stress test it, you can see how good your operators are, how good they stack against other people, and this is really the most difficult content that is currently in Arknights, and the next contingency contract is coming within the next couple weeks. It's supposed to drop mid-September, and I am super excited for it. I'm hoping that you guys are excited for it. And so what I'm planning on doing today is going over contingency contract for people who may not have actually been through the first contingency contract on global servers. We're going to be going over what is contingency contract, how it works. I'll explain all about that. We'll explain what kind of maps you can play on, the rewards, and how to prepare, which is most important because you will want to prepare most likely in order to maximize the benefits and maximize your rewards. So before we get into all that, let me just say a quick reminder, guys, go ahead and click that subscribe button if you haven't already, completely free, and it lets you know when I put out a new video. It really helps me out. It helps me know that you guys are really digging the content, and it helps grow the channel, and let's spread that word. So without further ado, let's jump right into the video. And first up, let's cover what is contingency contract. So contingency contract is all about the contingencies. Now, your contingencies are basically additional rules for the map. They're rules that are either going to be increasing the damage of enemy units, it's going to be limiting what operators you can bring, it's going to be increasing speed, changing how many enemies you can let through, all things like that. So they're basically going to be making your level more difficult. And with that comes some risk. So what is risk? So for example, if we are talking about an increase in your enemy's attack power, risk 1 might be attack increase by 15%, risk 2, 35%, and finally risk 3, 80%. Now those are numbers from the last contingency contract. They are on the screen right here. So the way this would work is that a risk 1 clear would only include the contingency that the enemies increase attack by 15%. If you want an additional risk, you could go up to 35, and then a third risk go up to 80. So that's basically the way that risk works. Before you go into a map, you'll have a big table of all the contingencies that are available to you, and you can go in, you can mix and match to your liking. If you want to max them out, you won't be able to select all of them. If you select whatever the highest tier you pick in a category, so for example, if we're talking increase in enemy attack, if you pick the 80%, you will not be able to pick the 35% and 15%. It will cancel those out automatically. So why do you want to do this? Well, the higher your risk, the higher your reward. And remember, the more risk you do add to a level, the more difficult it will become. Once you get up into the higher risks, it gets insanely difficult. Don't feel like you need to jump in right when you start. Honestly, you won't be able to because you will have to unlock some contracts, so you will have to start out with lower risk, but it gets you used to the map, it gets you used to the waves, and you can slowly build up your risk. You don't have to jump right into it. You got 2 weeks for this. Also, important note, if you are chasing risk, if you are trying to maximize your rewards, keep in mind that week 2 is going to be easier than week 1. The reason for this: so week 1, we have a pool of contingencies that are released. When we hit week 2, there is another pool that is going to be added. So the pool is going to expand, and because of that, you have more chances of getting easier risks to complete. So remember that. If you are going for max, don't feel stressed out. You don't need to get it week 1. Just wait for week 2 and you'll get some easier contracts that you can complete. Also of note is that this event does not require sanity. So you can play these over and over and over again without having to worry about, am I gonna hit my daily limit? No, you can still farm all your materials. You can still play the game while doing contingency contracts. So don't worry about that at all. Also, a little tip, keep a lookout for contingencies that overlap where you can get essentially free risk. So what do I mean by this? So for example, in the last contingency contract we had, there was a contingency that took out 10 tiles on the map. Now that sounds like a lot, but when you actually looked at the map, all those 10 tiles were the range tiles. There was also a contract where you couldn't take any casters or snipers. So that made that risk essentially free because you weren't going to do that anyway. So keep an eye out for that. Some of these contingencies are synergistic with each other, and they do basically give you free rewards, which is a very nice thing when you're trying to boost up that risk and get more bounties. Okay, so now that we've covered what contingency contract is as an event, there's two different ways you can play. There is a non-rotating map and there is a rotating map. I want to start with rotating map first because that's not necessarily the main game mode, but it is the easiest way to get your contract bounties. So on the rotating map, it's easier because every day you're going to be getting a new map, and every day you're also going to be getting new contingencies. Along with this, instead of just needing to go for, say, risk 18, your goal is now more to complete quests. So you'll have a list of contingencies that you need to clear that'll have certain combinations. Usually it's somewhere between 2 and 4, and all you need to do is select these contingencies. If you clear the map with those requirements selected, you will get an extra bonus in terms of your currency. Now, this is a very nice way to build up your currency and get it fast. These change every day. You get a ton of currency from these. So if your roster isn't good enough to get a bunch of risk in the non-rotating map, don't worry. These are going to be for you. There are a ton of people who are putting out low star guides, and trust me, I used them the first time contingency contract rolled around, and they are very helpful. So if you need some help, go ahead and check those out. But for the most part, they're not too difficult. They are more challenging than your standard content, but in terms of difficulty, they're probably around like the chapter 5, chapter 6 area. So as a general point, I would prioritize these first. Always make sure you get your dailies done. You only have to do up to risk 8 in order to get all of the bounty currency. But then you have also your additional missions, and they'll give you a lot more currency. So prioritize these if you need to prioritize something. Next up, we have the non-rotating map. And this is probably where you're going to be seeing a majority of your high-end players, your streamers, your content creators. This is where you're going to see them most of the time because they're going to want to get as high risk as possible. In order to get all your rewards, you only have to get to risk 18. However, it is a little bit of an arms race to try and get as high as possible for bragging rights, to make yourself, kind of feel good about what you did, or just to test your account. This is really like how you push the account. So the non-rotating map, it's non-rotating. It's going to be there for the full 2 weeks. It's going to be the same map. But like I said earlier, you will get a standard pool of contingencies week 1, and then you will get additional contingencies week 2, some of which will make it easier, some of which will make it harder, but because you have a bigger pool, you can more easily get to, a risk count that your account can handle is really what it comes down to. So now that we've gone over how do we get the currency, now let's talk about what you can spend it on, your rewards, because that's what everyone wants to hear. Well, I would say the big things you can spend your rewards on. 1, a new character. We have access to Bibik. She's not very expensive at all. She should be very easy to get. She's kind of like a baby Chen. The other thing, there is an Amiya skin, her Newsy skin, that is also available. And then basically the other things that are available that you're going to want to go for are the materials. So you'll have access to a couple of D32 steel, which is very nice. A couple of tier 4 mats. You got some tier 3 mats. But the big thing is there is a currency sink for contingency contract. So if you go through and it is possible to buy everything in the shop and you still have currency left over, there are some materials that there are an infinite amount of that you can just sink your leftover currency into, which is very nice. I really like it when Arknights does this. So it doesn't necessarily punish you or not reward you for going further above and beyond what they already ask of you. So that is very nice. This is a great way to stock up your account. If you are a free-to-play player and you are having trouble getting some materials, this is for you. Try and max out your daily risk on the rotating map. Like, just get as much of these materials as you can because they're essentially free. You might have to upgrade some of your units to complete the risk, but this isn't requiring you any sanity, which is fantastic. So how much is this all going to take in order to clear? Well, in order to clear all the materials out of the shop, not including the infinite materials, obviously, it's going to take 3,075 bounties in order to clear. In order to clear the operators and the skins, it's going to take 1,320. And lastly, if you do want the epic defender and sniper tokens, which you can get after all the Bibik and Amiya, that's another 1,000. So all in all, it sounds like a lot, but honestly, over the 2 weeks, it shouldn't be too much of a problem if your account is mid-tier or higher. If you are a beginning player, it might be tough to hit those numbers, but don't worry, contingency contract comes out every couple of months. So once you go through it once, you'll be able to know what to look out for the next one, and you can build up towards that. So speaking of building up towards that, how do we build our accounts in order to maximize the rewards we can get from contingency contract? Well, there are 2 routes we can take. I'm going to start out with the route that contains the least amount of spoilers. So if you haven't noticed already, which I would be surprised if you haven't, time codes are going to be all like on the time bar below me. You're going to have them there. They're going to be in the description, and they're also right above me. If you haven't seen those, bro, I don't know where you're looking. But in case you want to skip the spoiler section, skip over the part where I'm talking about preparing with a strategy. Skip to the next section after that, preparing with a strategy. I'll be talking a little bit more in detail about who you should be using specifically. This section upcoming is just general building your account. And in terms of strategies, I'm talking more like strategies that are already proven through CN. Obviously, there's a ton of videos on how to clear high risk because they've already had this event months ago. But if you want to go in clean, if you want to go in cold, not knowing which operators you should bring or what strategy you should necessarily follow in order to do your own thing. So how do we want to do this? Well, in terms of efficiency wise, I want to start out by saying this isn't entirely recommended. Because if you are kind of stingy on how you use your materials, you may end up boosting a unit that you don't necessarily need or that will be used in the future. So just take that with a grain of salt that you may want to kind of dip your toes into the strategy to see, you know, who you might want to level up. But anyway, so how do we want to go into this? So overall, what level do we want to get our operators to? Well, recommended is like E2 30 to 40. Really, like getting your operators to E2 is going to be huge. A lot of operators get a giant boost when you get them to E2. However, if you don't have the materials for E2 or you don't have a lot of E2 units, you should be fine getting kind of mid-tier in the rewards with maxed out E1 characters. So we're talking like full skill 7, getting their trust up to 100%, getting them up to E1 70 or wherever they need to be for their max. Do all that, and you should be able to get at least mid-tier rewards. And then if you're able to E2 a couple units, that may help you out in the long run. However, my overall recommendation would be, if you're not sure which units to level up, just save your materials. Don't go out and spend your materials early. Wait until you get into contingency contract. Wait and see what your account could use. What are you weak on? What's the map like? You know, stuff like that. Don't waste them early. Just wait and see what your account needs. I did that last time with the rotating maps. You know, my snipers were not very developed. They were pretty weak. And so when one of the daily maps came up and it was like snipers only, I had materials so I could dump them into some of my snipers, and then the level became much easier. So highly recommended. Just wait to upgrade your characters until you need to, especially if you're very low on resources and you need to save them as much as you can. So what do we want to do with operators? The name of the game is diversify, 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 diversify. A lot of the contingencies that come out are going to restrict the classes you can use. Common ones are no snipers or casters. Another one is no guards or defenders. So if your account is all guards and defenders, you might have a really tough day where you have some, you know, free risk that you can get with no guards and defenders, but you can't do it because your casters and snipers aren't built. So make sure that your account is well-rounded. Make sure that you're not dipping into one class too heavily. Spread out the resources, build your account, make it a more well-rounded account. This is going to make things much easier. And again, if you have your resources saved and you get to a point where you're stuck like that, no worries, you got a bunch of resources stockpiled so you can put them where you need to. Okay, now if you are looking for specifics in terms of what operators you should be leveling up, This is where we're going to talk about that section. So you could potentially say that these are spoilers because they are included in proven strategies. Overall, these are just units that, like, you're not going to be upset if you level them up. They're just going to be a help for you, and probably you already have some of these units leveled up. So first of all, you're gonna want some strong defenders. Now, I don't mean overall strong, I mean like DPS strong. So your Hoshiguma, Neon, and Korra. I know Korra is not like great in terms of DPS, but overall she's gonna be like one of your lower tier. Really, you're gonna want like a Hoshiguma or Neon. If you don't have any of these units, Korra you should have, but if you don't, Matterhorn and Dernar are going to be your best alternatives. Matterhorn is very good at self-sustaining, while Dernar is good with DPS and also is one of the only defenders who can do arts damage. We'll see in the future here, arts damage is very important when it comes to contingency contract. But overall, in the proven concepts that we've seen, Hoshiguma is the best on skill 3. If you can mastery it, great. If you can't, not a big deal. Yeah, so moving on, we have your healing defenders. Obviously, Saria is an insane operator when it comes to contingency contract. She was an overperformer in the first one, and she's going to be an overperformer here. Her skill 1 is going to be her priority. If you can get it to mastery 1, cool. Getting to mastery 3 is huge. Getting that extra charge is an absolute godsend. So if you can get it there, fantastic. The higher you can get her, even better. Saria is great. Some good alternatives, if you don't have them, Neural and Gummy are going to be great alternatives. Even if you have one additional one, it's going to be very important. Healing defenders are huge in contingency contract because there's always a need for more damage. Once you get up to higher risks, these enemies are going to be doing massive damage. So rather than having your units last longer, you need to kill as fast as possible. So really, we don't have the luxury of healers. So because of that, healing defenders are going to be massive. If you don't have any of those, you could always use Cardigan or Spot. Not exactly recommended, but you know, if you don't have any of the above, Gummy you should definitely have, because what, Gummy's $1. Get the Gummy. But if you don't have a Saria or Neural, Cardigan or Spot will do just fine. Wouldn't be Arknights if we didn't talk about guards. So when we're talking about guards, Blaze and Silver Ash, I mean, they're going to be your go-tos. Their DPS is out of this world. Silver Ash's skill 3 is nuts, possibly one of the best skills in the game. Your other go-tos are going to be Helliger, Lapland, Spectre. You know, yes, they're all like 5 stars and above. So if you have them, good on you. If you don't, we do have some alternatives. Astesia is also on there. Astesia, this is kind of like where she shines, because like I said, arts damage is huge. So Lapland, really good when it comes to contingency contract. Astesia is also really good. She can also hit multiple units, which is fantastic for when you start stacking up your units. In terms of lower rarity, Estelle is a pretty decent alternative to Spectre. She's going to be another one of your AoE guards. She can also heal herself, which is really good, especially since we're not bringing healers, the fact that she can heal herself is very good. Mouse is kind of your alternative to Astesia. You can bring them both. You know, in the first contingency contract, it was a very common practice to bring both of them. Midnight is a okay alternative to Lapland. Obviously not nearly as good, but, you know, kind of plays the same role, just at a lower power level. And lastly, Malentha. Malentha is just an absolute beast when it comes to damage. Her health is through the roof. Her damage output is crazy good for 3 stars, and everyone should have a Malentha. Really, everyone should have a Malentha fully leveled up. So those are your guards. Those are kind of the ones that you want to prioritize and will overall perform the best. In terms of vanguards, really there are 2 that shine. First of all, Myrtle. Everyone knows that Myrtle is an absolute monster. So obviously you want to rank 7. The higher you can get her skill 1, the better you're going to be. Her skill 2 is good because you get those additional heals, but her skill 1 will help you just explode onto the field. Bagpipe is the other one. Now, Bagpipe is not officially released yet, but CN completed this event with Bagpipe. So I'm assuming that Bagpipe will be released at the same time contingency contract is. Bagpipe is insane because her damage is like on par, if not better, than some of the guards in this game. She is a vanguard, okay? A lot of the other vanguards, really not that great once you get into the late game in terms of damage and defense. Bagpipe is the exception. She is nuts if you're lucky enough to pull her. Very useful. Obviously, Texas and Siege, if you have them, are going to be very good. And then beyond that, you know, it's whatever you got, really. There's really no like great alternatives to these four. These are for sure the four best in the game. Beyond that, they all play very similar roles. And last up, we get to the specialists. Now, this is the point where I think a lot of people are not going to have these units leveled up. Because overall, when it comes to the main content of the game, the story mode, these units are not, there's no reason to prioritize them. So first ones we want to be looking at are pushers. Your best one is going to be Feeder. Feeder is amazing when it comes to contingency contract, and Shaw is the other one. There is a special tile when it comes to this contingency contract map that will increase their push, which can push them into the top lane, and then it'll push them onto the heat pipe tiles, which does a massive amount of damage, and it's a very commonly used strat. Next up, we have our quick deploy units. These units proved to be very useful in the last contingency contract, and I'm assuming that it will be the same exact thing for this one. So Project Red, if you have her, prioritize her, then Gravel, then Waifu. These units are very useful when it comes to stalling. Really, what this contingency contract is all about, especially when you get up to the higher risks, is about stalling. You want to slow the units down so that way they don't clump. As soon as they start clumping up, massive amounts of damage are going to be applied to your units. So the more spread out you can make them, the better. Speaking of stall, next up we have Manticore and Ethan. These units are great because they're not going to be blocking, they're not going to be targeted by your enemies. They're going to walk right through them, but they're going to be slowing them down, they're going to be stunning them, and leaving more breathing room for your guards and your defenders to take care of the enemies that they're already dealing with. Also, this map on the top has a bunch of heat pipes, so if you can slow them down, they will take more damage from that, which is less time hitting your guards and defenders. Finally, your pullers. Cliffheart and Snowsaunt are going to be very good because they can pull multiple units. I'm not sure how often these are going to be prioritized here, but they do help stall a little bit and slowing down units. Cliffheart is very good because she also stuns. So just a couple other units, I would say those are lower on the priority list. I would say your pushers are higher on the priority list, and then of course your quick deploy units are in the middle. Lastly, you'll notice that I didn't focus on any range units. There are no snipers and there are no casters. Why is that? Well, in this go around, there is a contingency that says ban all ranged operators, and it is a risk 3. So for 3 free risk, you don't have to worry about any ranged operators, which, you know, if your account is mostly ranged, you're not going to like that one very much. But if you are going for those higher numbers, trying to maximize your rewards, that's a very easy one to do. So because of that, and because we know that that's a strategy that works not using ranged operators, that's why I'm not covering any ranged operators, because really it's not going to be necessary. And finally, the most important thing when it comes to contingency contract is remember to have fun. Don't stress too hard about this. Yes, I know everyone wants to get the rewards, but don't lose sleep over this. Don't stress yourself out. It's really not that big of a deal. If you can't clear one extra risk, don't worry about it. Just wait until the next contingency contract and you'll be able to get your rewards then. Ultimately, you know, as long as you get the rewards that don't come back, you know, if you really don't think that your account is going to be able to clear high-end risk, go for the operator first. Go for Bibik, go for the skin. Don't worry about the materials. The materials will come with time naturally through the game. But the character and the skins, those might not come back around, or, I mean, they're going to come back around, but for you, it might be more difficult to acquire them. So just don't stress too much about it. It's supposed to be fun. It's supposed to be endgame content. Just, you know, use it to test your account. Use it to see where your abilities are. Use it just as like a puzzle. It's supposed to be fun. Let it be a game, okay? But guys, that's all I have for today. I hope you guys enjoyed this beginner guide on contingency contract. let me know, what is your guys' goal in terms of the non-rotating map? What's your goal for the risk? I know that I'll be able to clear risk 18. I already cleared risk 18 last time. I think this time I'm going to be going for risk 24. 24 might be a little high, so maybe like 23, 24. But we'll see. That's where I'm planning to get. Once Contingency Contract comes out, I will be streaming that a lot more. I'll be streaming that over on twitch.tv/xjazz207. Usually stream Monday, Wednesday, Friday around 8 p.m. EST. Also, don't forget to subscribe to this channel, so that way you see more content like this all the time. I post videos Tuesdays and Thursdays. And lastly, if you want to know where I post anything, go ahead and go follow my Twitter. I always post when I post a new YouTube video, or I go live on Twitch. I'm also posting highlights there in case, you know, I play a different game. I've been playing Fall Guys a little bit. So if any highlights pop up, I post them there as well. But that is going to do it for today. I hope you guys did enjoy the video, and I will see you in the next one. Peace!